and welcome back to Matt Talks Mental, where we talk about everything from the latest psychology breakthroughs to, high school and feelings and stuff. Today, we have a guest star. JJ, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm JJ. I am a student at Valley Park High School. I'm a sophomore, and I've been at the school for 3 years.
Yeah. So what are we talking about today?
Off of what I've seen, we're talking about anxiety and people with anxiety and symptoms of anxiety and panic attacks and such, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So jumping right in, what are the differences between an anxiety disorder and normal, stress levels of anxiety, just for those that might not know?
So anxiety, it is natural to have some form of anxiety, as it is anxiety is it's a feeling. Everyone has it. It's like happiness and sadness, but people with depression feel more sadness. So people with chronic anxiety will have more anxiety about things not necessarily quote unquote normal people would have anxiety about, such as they might be anxious to even wake up in the morning. They might be anxious to go get food because what if you burn down the house or stuff like that. That's almost an oversimplification of it, but essentially chronic anxiety versus anxiety is you feel it all the time.
Yeah. So what are some struggles that you've had, dealing with anxiety and living as a person with anxiety?
Well, struggles in general of anxiety is really it honestly comes with procrastination. More of I don't want to do it because if I do, what could happen? That is an issue with anxiety. It also comes with it indecisiveness of you don't do something until it's too late because what if something bad happens? It's more reactive than proactive in general. That's what I found with anxiety.
Yeah. So not a lot of people think about this, but what are the strengths of having anxiety?
Well, the strengths of having anxiety is you will be tunnel vision focused on whatever you have anxiety about. But when you do, you probably will think of the worst case scenario, at least for you. It will, and then you could probably be working on in your mind how to prevent that worst case, because that's what anxiety almost is. That's why people have it in general. It's it's almost to make you think about the worst thing is what I've found.
Yeah. One of the things that my mom kind of talked about with her anxiety is she's literally never late because she has such bad anxiety about being late and being on time. So she's always 30 minutes early to everything.
Yes, that is a thing with anxiety.
Yeah. What do you feel physically in your body when you're having really bad an anxiety attack or a panic attack? So
panic attacks are, me personally, I have felt I feel like a tightness in my chest almost. It almost feels like I'm floating in the sense that your stomach drops, like if you're falling or floating or whatever. I've also felt this unnatural feeling of just in general crying. It's overwhelming. That's what I've in general felt with panic attacks and anxiety attacks.
Yeah. How are things different or difficult as a child having an anxiety disorder?
So I felt the difficulty with anxiety is almost always living in what ifs. What if this happens? What if that happens? Especially with anxiety, it makes it worse. And it just, in general, you feel that and it makes you feel like crap.
Yeah. Well, on that note, so you're talking about the what ifs of having anxiety and kind of what goes through your head. What do you do to counter those thoughts or feelings, or what do you do to minimize them?
So I personally don't have really anything. I've heard there are things like breathing exercises you can do. There are there's things like breathing exercises. There's things like removing yourself from the situation that's making you feel anxious. Or for me, what usually stops it is just passing the time period of when I think something's going to happen. or the passing the item or the thought that is making me anxious in the first place. But that's just me. I don't really know.
Yeah, that's okay. And, things like therapy or other stuff like that will help a lot. But even just like talking about it can help, honestly.
Right.
And I know a lot of people's tactics are honestly just to write it out, like to see it to the end.
Right.
And yeah, it's effective, but I would recommend trying like some different things just to like, see what works and see what doesn't.
Yeah. Experiment.
Yeah, exactly. So what are some coping mechanisms you use to help like deal with your anxiety and stress, or some good ones that you've heard of?
So coping mechanisms I have heard of. I think you actually told me about this one, the 5 senses method. Is that what you called it? Yeah, that was one.
Do you want me to
I don't.
explain it?
Yeah, if you could explain, I don't fully remember.
Yeah. So the 5 senses method it's a grounding technique. So it works it's not just for anxiety, it's also for things like disassociative people, like things like that. But so the 5 senses method is where you look for 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can feel, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. And it works because of, like, for me at least, because of the counting and the slowing down and just instead of being so in your head, being with the outside world. That's how it works for me at least. But,
It's grounding, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is one I've heard of. Definitely breathing is a huge thing I've heard. Getting your mind off of the item or thing or whatever is also another coping mechanism, quote unquote, that I've heard.
Mm-hmm. So what advice do you have for people that are friends, family, or like in relationships with people having an anxiety disorder?
So advice I have is honestly like, don't treat it like a bomb. Like someone has an anxiety attack or someone with anxiety, you don't want to like act like they're going to have a panic attack every second. That's not helpful. That could actually make it worse, and it's just in general not a thing you should do. The best thing I have found is honestly talking with the person. Like talking with the person who has anxiety, ask them what they want, how they feel about it, their like what they want from you in support of either a panic attack or issues with anxiety. And then you do your best to follow that. But if you didn't know they had anxiety beforehand, or they have an anxiety panic attack and you had no idea, and you don't know what to do, I would just recommend standing with them. Don't crowd them, but at least let them know you're there, and whenever they can physically respond to you, let them tell you what they need in that moment.
Yeah, that's something that I hear a lot too, is be there for them and try to help them with it, but don't go all in and be really overbearing and stuff like that towards them, because I know that for a lot of people can just make it so much worse.
I mean, if you're having a panic attack and someone runs at you and is right next to you, hugging you and what do you need? I can do everything. I can, whatever you need. That's not helpful. That's overloading. It's going to be so much issue, especially if they're claustrophobic. It's a whole mess, sensory wise.
Oh yeah. So I know that you kind of have a background of moving around a lot. I know that I'm glad that you're settled down here.
For now.
It better be. But what kind of anxiety did you have towards moving around a lot?
So the first couple moves, for the record, I moved probably 4 or 5 times. But you can really feel it right before a move. Everything's going really fast. That's probably when the anxiety is at the all-time high, is probably a week before the move, because I wasn't told much as a kid, or even I knew we were moving, but you don't know where you're going. You probably know the state, not even the city you're going to. So that, you're trying to figure out, where are we going? How are we getting there? We don't know if we're flying or if we're driving, or if we do. It's a whole mess, logistically and mentally. And your stuff is getting packed, so you can't see it for a couple months while you have to unpack it, and then you lose stuff. It's mentally, with anxiety, you will immediately start thinking when you're moving what goes wrong, and throughout the moves, you almost get used to it, but still, it is a huge thing, and it does happen a lot.
Yeah.
With that. it is really bad like the day before.
So what, like, support or words of encouragement do you have towards kids that may be dealing with a situation kind of like that, or dealing with anxiety towards moving?
So advice I would give for them is, honestly, talk to your parents or whoever is moving you. Figure out where you're going. The minute you know exactly where you're going, that eases a bit off your mind, because now you know. That's one less unknown for you. That's one less what if. Then I would try to figure out maybe schooling options in the area. It's all about communication, really, in this sense. The minute you know what's going on, how this is going to work, the what ifs start dwindling, and you just need to close off as many as possible. Talk to your parents, talk to whoever's moving you, figure out how you're getting there, because that's another what if gone. Figure out maybe a school district in the area that you might know, that's another thing gone. Maybe figure out, even if you really wanted to get into it, you could even figure out the demographic of the neighborhood. Figure out, is there children, is there old people, who's living there, and then you have another what if gone. It's all just about eliminating the what ifs, and then and that will lessen the anxiety. Usually there's still going to be what ifs, there's never going to be an exact, so you will still have anxiety, but that should help lessen that anxiety. And honestly, you're along for the ride. What can you do? You kind of gotta go into it with the mindset of you're just along for the ride.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think that's where we're going to close today. Thank you guys for coming to our podcast, and I'll see you guys next time.
Yeah.